High Curator Raylan stared at the tactical display, his three-fingered hands hovering over the glass. 800 Vorgan icons, a jagged red scar across the sector, suddenly vanished behind a solid wall of 1,000 blinking blue signatures. War Master Thorn's voice crackled through the comms, cold and certain, as the Terran wall locked into place. I've seen civilizations rise and fall through this lens, but never a debt repaid with such thunder. If you want to witness the full weight of the Gratitude Protocol, subscribe to our chronicles. Now let's look at how the silence began. 43 years earlier, the air in the Great Archive had smelled of ozone and ancient parchment. Valen had spent that afternoon polishing the Elder Chisel, a heavy tool of ceremonial basalt that felt more like a burden than a symbol. The Mandate was a shivering collection of colonies then, begging for the scrap metal technology the Astrari had considered obsolete for centuries. We gave them fire when they were shivering in the dark. Valen remembered the way the Terran ambassadors had looked eyes wide with a desperate, hungry kind of hope. The Astrari Council had called it a charity, a minor footnote in their peaceful scientific pursuit. They didn't realize they were arming the galaxy's future apex predator. As the decades drifted, the Terrans stopped asking for help. The comms went quiet, and the Astrari retreated into their meditations, content to watch the stars from a distance. Valen grew old, the Elder Chisel gathering dust on his desk, until Disciple Kiri burst into the sanctum with a face as pale as starlight. "The Vorgan hegemony," Kiri stammered, her voice echoing off the vaulted ceilings. "They've branded us the architects of the Terran plague. 500 ships, Curator. They seek extinction." Valen's heart had slowed. He looked at the chisel, then at the silent communication array. He sent the plea, a desperate burst of data toward the Terran borders. 1 day passed, then 5, then 10. The silence was absolute, a cold vacuum where he expected a brother's hand. Maybe the galaxy's greatest superpower didn't forget. Maybe they were just too busy building a fortress for us. If you believe loyalty is the ultimate currency, subscribe to see the vault open. By the third week, the Vorgan vanguard had arrived early. A Thelgard had no shields, no guns, only the memory of a kindness done nearly half a century ago. Valen had stood on the command balcony, clutching the Elder Chisel so hard his joints ached, watching the sky turn the bruised purple of an incoming fleet. The Vorgan ships didn't just arrive, they tore into real space like a serrated blade. Valen watched the sensor array, his breath catching as the red signatures multiplied. 43 years of silence wasn't neglect, it was the quiet sound of a debt being prepared for payment. He braced for the first orbital strike, the Elder Chisel heavy in his grip, but the fire never fell. The space between the atmosphere and the Vorgan fleet suddenly fractured. It wasn't the messy transition of standard warp drives, but a surgical unfolding of the stars. 1,000 Terran hulls, sleek and armored in a shimmering alloy that seemed to swallow the light of Aethelgard's sun, slid into the gap. At the center of the formation sat a dreadnought that dwarfed the Vorgan flagships, its hull etched with the ancient runes of the Astrari. War Master Alara Thorn didn't wait for a formal greeting. Her image appeared on the curator's screen, not as a supplicant, but as a guardian. She didn't look like the shivering refugees Valen remembered. She looked like a goddess of the forge. The Vorgan fleet didn't even have time to adjust their shields. The Terrans utilized evolved Astrari tech subatomic pulses that turned the Vorgan engines into dead weight, neutralizing the threat without a single shot reaching the planet's surface. It was a masterclass in violence, restrained by absolute precision. Thorn's gaze met Valen's through the flickering hologram, and, for a moment, the curator saw the ghost of the student, looking back at the teacher. Months later, the silence of the Great Archive was replaced by the low, rhythmic thrum of Terran construction. Aethelgard was being fitted with permanent, invincible planetary defenses, maintained by joint crews who spoke a language of shared mathematics and mutual respect. They call us family now, and the Terrans protect family with a violence that borders on worship. Valen eventually traveled to the Terran capital, a spire of glass and steel reaching for the heavens. In the heart of their Hall of Heroes, he found a massive memorial dedicated to his people's sacrifice during the Scorched Era. It was a testament carved in a scale the Astrari had never imagined. Thorn walked beside him, her heavy boots silent on the polished floor. She stopped before a pedestal and reached into a case, pulling out a new tool. It was a chisel, shaped exactly like the basalt relic Valen had carried for a lifetime, but this one was forged from an indestructible Terran alloy that glowed with an inner heat. As he took the weight of the new metal, Valen realized the debt hadn't just been paid, it had been transformed into a foundation. He looked at the instrument in his hands, knowing it would never gather dust again. The dark stone of the old era sat forgotten as the new chisel caught the light of 1,000 rising suns. The student has become the shield, but would you have risked your own survival to arm a stranger? Subscribe to tell us if the Astrari's gamble was worth the wait, and join us tomorrow for the next chronicle.